There are some laws of the Torah which have not been in use for many, many generations. Some of these relate to the laws of war. How does a Jewish army behave when it goes out to battle? And this remained in the realm of theory until 1948, when once again the Jewish people had power and control of Eretz Israel. In Parshat Shoftim, some of these laws are discussed, and in particular how the Jewish army behaves when it besieges an enemy city. For example, the law of Bal Tashchit, that the army cannot cut down fruit-bearing trees in order to make siege engines to bring the city to its feet. And one particular law that is discussed by the commentators, including Maimonides, is how exactly do they besiege the city? And Maimonides tells us an interesting thing, that when they go out to battle, they surround the city, but only on 3 sides. One side is left open. Where does this come from? Well, if we go back to the book of Bamidbar, when the Jewish people fought against Midian, the nation of Midian, they were told to go out against them, particularly as God commanded Moses. And there's an oral tradition that Moses told the army only to surround the enemy on 3 sides, but to leave the 4th side open. This is what Maimonides rules in his great code, the Mishnah Torah. What is the reasoning behind this law? And most of the commentators explain that it is a law of compassion. Even on the battleground, the Jewish soldier, the Jewish army should be compassionate. They should leave one side open for the enemy to escape. If they find that they're under too much pressure, at least they'll have an opportunity to leave the city. And this is the conventional thinking. However, when we look at the commentary of Ramban, Nachmanides, in his notes to the Sefer HaMitzvot, the book of laws of the Rambam, he tells us that in fact it is for a totally different reason that one side of the city is left open. And he explains as follows. It's actually a very clever military strategy. If you surround the enemy on all 4 sides, they will have no choice but to fight to the death in order to save themselves. But if there's one side open, in the back of their minds, they know they don't have to fight so hard because they can always escape. And therefore, by leaving one side open, you actually create a psychological strength that they're not going to fight as much as they would fight if they were totally surrounded on all sides. Now, this seems to be a law that only applies to the army, to the battleground, but it is in fact a lesson for life. When we go into certain endeavors, how do we go into them? Do we go into those endeavors fully committed, with the thought in my mind that I have to work at this no matter what? Or do we go into an endeavor thinking, well, if this doesn't really work out, I'll just leave? And I was told of a particular woman who was learning before her wedding. She was learning the color classes, the bride classes, and she mentioned to her teacher, she said, look, if it doesn't work out, we'll just get a divorce. She was going into her marriage, she was entering into the chuppah with the thought in the back of her mind, if this doesn't work out, we'll just get a divorce. Now, it's true that Jewish law does allow a divorce when a marriage doesn't work. But to go into a marriage with that type of a thought process is inherently negative. The thought process should be, I'm going into this fully committed. I'm going to work at it as much as I can. And this is a problem that is plaguing our generation. People have a problem with commitment. They don't want to get involved in things. They go into it always with an escape plan. We can get out of it. If it becomes too difficult, we'll just get out of it. But we find that Jewish belief is just not like that. The way that we have to approach life is with full and utter commitment. God comes to us and He tells us, this is a Torah. You accept the Torah. And in fact, the Jewish people said, Na'aseh, we will do, v'nishma, and only later we will listen. They totally committed themselves to God's Torah. And it's true that there are times that it is very difficult. Sometimes it's hard to get up early in the morning. Sometimes it's difficult to give charity. Sometimes a person has to give up a lot in order to keep Shabbat and to keep Kashrut. But if you go into it with a belief the same way that the army went into that we have to fight here to the death, we've got to do it, we've got to give our utmost, then you'll have that level of commitment. But if you go into your Judaism with the thought, if this becomes a little bit too difficult, I'm going to get out of it, Judaism is not going to be able to function in your life. So this is the lesson that we learn from the army. Although it is a law on the battleground, it is something that is relevant in all of our lives, to go into something with complete and utter commitment. Good Shabbos.